People who have encountered or saw a serial killer in their lives, what did it feel like? What was the interaction like? This is copied and pasted from another comment I made about the time I encountered Adam Strong. He used to work at the gas station right around the corner from my in-laws' house. I saw him there once. I was sitting in the car while my husband went inside to pay for gas, and Strong came over and stood right by my window. He was just hanging around the gas pumps. I just felt an overwhelming feeling of fear and disgust. I thought he was the grossest thing I'd ever seen. He didn't even seem human. When the news broke of him, my in-laws were shocked. He'd served my mother-in-law at that gas station a million times. That gas station is in the same plaza as a Tim Hortons. My brother-in-law used to hang around that Tim Hortons and smoke outside, and Strong would often join him. They got to know each other. They weren't friends, but they took smoke breaks together semi-often. Also, my husband and I were walking through the park/lakefront in Oshawa all day Sunday, right before they found the body of Rory Yash. Yuck. Not exactly the same thing, but I knew someone who killed multiple people with an axe. He was my aunt's boyfriend/husband and father of her youngest child. He was very sweet when we first met, and he used to babysit me all the time. I remember him giving me a lot of hugs, and he loved his stepdaughter. But things went very sour after a few years. He became very abusive to my aunt and everyone close to her. He eventually became a huge drug addict, and that's when he started killing people. I don't remember exactly how many victims there were, but I do know they all happened because of drug deals gone wrong. Also, he lit the house on fire. I was around 8 to 12 when these things happened. I grew up about a block and a half from Bob Verdella. He was eventually caught for picking up teenage gay males and torturing, raping, and killing them. Prior to that, he was, from what I remember, a pretty normal and fairly social person. He was actually part of the neighborhood watch group that my dad was on. He ran an oddities shop at the flea market near our house called Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, which I guess is a little weird. I still remember the day he was caught. I was over playing at a friend's house whose father was a police sergeant. There was a frantic knocking at the front door, and like 30 seconds later my friend's dad asked us to go play at my house for a while. One of Bob's would-be victims had escaped by shimmying out of a second-floor window while Bob was at work. The man, basically naked, ran across the street and started pounding on doors, and the first people that answered were next door to the house I was playing at. They immediately came next door, knowing a cop lived there. So Bob lived across from a police sergeant for years, torturing, raping, killing, and burying his victims in dog food bags in his backyard, never being caught. This all happened just as school was getting out for the summer, and my parents just let us stay home while they worked instead of doing daycare. Most days we'd hang out in the backyard behind Bob's, which was slightly elevated above his, watching the cops dig up dead bodies. My mom claimed the number of cops in the neighborhood for the next 2 months was so large that we were probably safer there than at a daycare. Obligatory not me answer, but my sister-in-law encountered Ivan Milat, one of the 2 men that inspired the Wolf Creek series. She was traveling the east coast of Australia for a few weeks with her brother. One night, her and her brother were having jerky and beer by a campfire when Milat sat down at their campfire. When she first saw him, she thought he was a park ranger because of his style of dress. She thought he was going to tell them that they built their campfire in a prohibited area, but instead he commented on what a beautiful evening it was and pointed out some of the notable stars in the sky. Ivan never properly introduced himself. He just sat down and started chatting. He asked my sister-in-law where she was from, and she told him Darwin. He said, "What's a Darwin girl doing all the way out here?" My sister-in-law explained that she was on a road trip. She seemed to pique his interest when she told him that instead of doing the usual beach vacation, she wanted to do something a little more rugged, like explore caves, do a little rock climbing, and hike trails that were not popular with the tourists. My sister-in-law says that Ivan was friendly, and he had a lot of ideas about places she might like to go, including a cave that had a waterfall inside, which was a bit of a hidden gem not well known to tourists. She felt comfortable talking with him, and when he invited her and her brother to join him at his campsite for some rabbit stew and beer, she would have said yes, but her brother instantly turned him down. Ivan's response to the rejection was a slight "well, I tried" shrug of the shoulders. He went back to his campsite, and her brother quickly packed their things in their rented Land Rover, and they wound up sleeping in the Rover outside a well-lit gas station that night. She said what was so scary about that night is that she felt almost immediately comfortable around Ivan. No red flags whatsoever. He reminded her of one of her uncles that worked construction, one of those rugged but worldly kind of guys, while her brother was immediately suspicious of the charming stranger. She kind of wonders what would have happened to her if her brother had not been there that night. Ah yes, Ivan Milat. One of my mates knows a guy, convoluted connection I know, who actually got a lift from him while backpacking around the countryside. Apparently he got no ill vibes from Ivan initially, until he started driving past the agreed drop-off destination and wouldn't explain why he didn't stop. They kept on going a fair distance, but old mate kicked up enough of a fuss that Ivan eventually stopped and let him out. It gets worse though. Night was starting to fall, and old mate decided that it was too far to bother walking anywhere before dark. So he ended up throwing down his sleeping bag in a small gully, fairly sheltered from view but still within sight of the road. He'd barely gotten set up for the night when he spotted Ivan's car slowly driving back along the road. The car trolled back and forth several times before eventually giving up and driving off. Needless to say, old mate didn't stay at his little campsite for much longer. He took off through the scrub and luckily got all the way back into town a few hours later. A few months later, he saw Ivan on the news and recognized him. Pretty chilling. I'm not sure exactly what this guy's deal was, because I was young and in a foreign country, but I'm telling this story here based on the fact that everyone was afraid enough that they all hid indoors when they heard he was out prowling around. I was like 7 or 8 years old, in Tonga visiting my dad's friend and his family. They had a trampoline outside their house, which I absolutely loved but didn't get as much time to play on it as I'd have liked because I had to share with 5 other kids. One afternoon, when everyone was distracted watching TV, I snuck outside to have some one-on-one time with the trampoline. I remember thinking it was really weird that there was nobody outside, and I mean nobody. It was like zombie apocalypse quiet. I was on the trampoline for about 5 minutes when a strange man walked up to me. He seemed off but I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong. In hindsight I think drugs were the most likely answer. He started talking to me, asking what I was doing etc. He asked my name and I gave him a fake name. Then he climbed up onto the trampoline with me and started getting uncomfortably close. He knocked me down and got on top of me. He had a horrible look in his eye and I was absolutely terrified. I pushed him off with minimal effort. He just let me push him, to be honest. He was 3 times my size and could easily have held me down. And he got back up again. I didn't know what to do. For some reason something inside told me not to run, because I was afraid he would catch me quickly and I knew I wasn't strong or fast enough to get away. I thought, I need to keep calm and trick him into thinking I'm not afraid, then escape when I get a better chance. So I continued to calmly talk to him, answering his questions with random lies as I started gathering my things and getting ready to go back inside. He pushed me down one last time and let me get back up again, and I said something about my dad will be out looking for me soon. He said, "Oh, you're leaving?" I said, "Yeah, sorry, I have to go. It's been lovely but my dad wants me back inside, okay bye," and he just sat down on the trampoline. Just sat there. I went back inside and nobody had noticed I was gone. Not a soul. About an hour or so later there was a bunch of commotion, as the police had found a wanted suspect outside the house, passed out on the trampoline. The kids told me in hushed whispers that the man was a vampire, and if he bites you, you die. Which kinda freaked me out because he did try to bite me. I never told anyone I had been outside because I was afraid of getting in trouble. Still haven't told anyone outside of Reddit. Now I obviously don't believe in the vampire aspect of the story, but it was still pretty fucking weird and I think he probably did kill some people.